Philadelphia Flyers have finally signed young goaltender Carter Hart. Carter Hart has been one of the most promising goaltenders in the National Hockey League, and they finally lock him in after somewhat of a tenuous negotiation. Nothing risky. There was no salary arbitration mentioned, but the Flyers were up against the cap, or still are up against the cap, and still have to get a deal done for Travis Sanheim. So credit to Frank Cervalli, Elliot Friedman, and now Chris Johnson, who I'm going to read his tweet here with the details. So Carter Hart gets a 3-year extension at a $3.979 million average cap hit. That's just under 4. It still leaves the Flyers kind of in a bind of some sort. They might have to move some salary out, and by some, I mean maybe a more minor player. This might be maybe even waiving a player or playing a player in the minors, maybe not carrying too many extra players in the overall lineup, but they'll be right against the cap, and they're going to have to bank cap space in other kind of ways this year. I mentioned this before. There's options of moving guys, especially next year. Maybe a guy like JVR might be leaving town with 1 year left at a $7 million cap hit, but a $5 million cash. This could be an option for the Flyers to maybe even have to move an asset to get rid of that, because they have to re-sign Couturier and Claude Giroux next year. So it does put them in somewhat of a bind. However, it doesn't put them in a position where it's not solvable. So the breakdown is, and again, credit to Chris Johnson, breakdown for the deal is $3.2 million in the first year, $3.6 million in the second year, and $4.479 million in the third year, and that's where Carter Hart gets paid. That will also leave 1 year left of RFA status with arbitration qualification of $4.5 million. So even if Carter Hart doesn't do, top of the world, which let's hope that's not the case, he can minimum make $4.5 million in arbitration. So Carter Hart has essentially earned himself some money. Not that surprising. Travis Sanheim, I do expect his number to come in around there, probably at 3.75 for about 3 years, maybe 2 years. But I do expect it for, pretty much generally come around the same range. Now, Carter Hart's numbers were down last year. Having said that, he's still legitimate number one goaltender. Bringing in Seth Jones as a backup proves that the team sees him that way. And even with the cap hit, you can't expect it really to be lower than that. I thought maybe $3.5 million would be a nice number to bring him in at. But it looks like, he's got negotiation power here, because quite frankly, he's the best young goaltender this team has seen since Sergei Bobrovsky, who the team kind of sold short on. So I think they believe in Carter Hart. I personally believe in Carter Hart, and I think Carter Hart believes in himself. And I think this contract kind of reflects that. Now, he didn't get a humongous long-term contract, but that's because the Flyers really can't afford to pay the rest of those years at this point where they are with the cap. So it's going to get interesting as far as what the Flyers do with cap management. I do expect them to try to shed some salary on forward. Flyers are pretty forward heavy, and that's why I mentioned a guy like JVR with how much he makes. It gets interesting. I don't think they necessarily want to move out a guy like Kevin Hayes, who plays center, who also makes about $7 million a year. So it gets interesting at that point. But Carter Hart finally locked up. This kind of solidifies where the team is at. And then I guess with the Sanheim situation building, I do expect the Flyers to bring him in at a nice number. Probably will be better than we expect just because of his down year. Though his minute played, will make it interesting. He might choose to actually go into salary arbitration, but I doubt it. I think most likely the case will be, they'll avoid it just like they did with Carter Hart. Again, in their mind, I don't think either player wants to go, and I don't think the team wants to move either guy, right? So I think the same case as Sanheim, it's lock him up, get it done. So Carter Hart comes in. I do think he's going to play majority of the games. He makes double what Martin Jones does, and I expect him to come in season strong. There's really no reason. It's not, it's easy to just look at the numbers and say his numbers were bad. And yes, he didn't play his best last year, but he stole the show the previous year, and the year before that. and the year before that, and the year before that. He doesn't really have a laundry list of years of struggling. He had some struggles this year, primarily in the second half of the year, where the first half of the year, he actually wasn't playing too poorly. The team was just playing horrifically defensively. And eventually it started weighing on him, started weighing on Brian Elliott as well. So, I think this is a nice number. I think this is a good number, and I think probably in that second year will probably look really nice at $4 million as the Flyers, eventually have to move some cap out, and then hopefully the cap can start going up again, and there won't be as many issues with that. So good for Carter Hart. Nice to see him back for 3 years. I do expect that he'll get re-signed even longer term after this. But for 3 more years at that type of cap hit for a guy who most likely will be one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League until, again, I still stick by that. I don't see any reason to not, considering the majority of what I've seen from him. He's been awesome to exceptional. So pretty good bang for your buck for a starting goaltender. The Flyers spending $6 million total right now on their goalies. That's not too bad, considering there are other teams out there that pay 3-4 times as much as that. Maybe not 4 times, but 3 times as much as that for similar quality. So good for Carter Hart. Thank you for staying in Philadelphia, and thank you for Chuck Fletcher for getting it done.